when we had arranged these meetings here, I didn't have any special topics in mind, so I asked that people here, the organizers and everything, pick a few topics. So one of the topics that was chosen is this particular talk, which I prepared in 1992. And there was a reason for that. I had just come back from India, where I had taken the first set of vows. In our monastic order, we really, you could say, almost 3 sets of vows. When we first join, then of course, informally, we pledge to ourselves that we'll lead a monastic life, and then we have what's called our kind of novitiate period, pre-probation period, whatever. And then, if we last, we get to take our first set of vows, which is called brahmacharya. So I had come back from India. There were about 45 of us, I believe, that took the brahmacharya vows together. And I was so impressed with the vows that we took, because they were different Sanskrit verses that were composed by one of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Atmagyananda. And at that time I felt that even though these were specifically for those who wanted to lead a monastic life, that they would be helpful for anyone to lead a spiritual life. And if I remember correctly, when I first gave this talk, it was in the month of January, when people generally make New Year's resolutions. So I tried to tie the two things in. We have that practice, which is usually not something very important. Very often people will say, I'll make a resolution that I'll go to the gym twice a week, I won't eat sweets, I'll try to lose weight, things like that. But it's actually a very nice time to reflect on the previous year and to decide what we want to change in our lives, and to make a firm resolution so that we really can make some type of change. So that's a little bit of the background of this talk. In fact, the vows that we take at the time of sannyasa, so that we have to wait another 4 years. So it's a total of 9 or 10 years. Those vows are not really what we would call vows. These are really, in Sanskrit, the word is used as sankalpa. That sankalpa, really, we make a formal statement that it's like a vrata, we can say, some type of pledge, some type of oath that we take, a vow that we will do certain types of things. At the time of sannyasa, there are different things that we recite from the Upanishads and other things. It's also extremely inspiring, of course, but these verses were somehow very nice. So I'm actually happy that this topic was chosen. So Arup chose a very nice topic, because we all sometimes have to look back on our lives. We have to reflect, because we get in ruts. We do the same thing over and over again. We have to sometimes take a little time off and reflect. Is our life going in the direction that we wanted to? Have we developed the habits that we think are helpful for us in spiritual life? Do we want to make any changes? And if so, are we willing to really make a firm resolve? And that's a little different from, I'll try it and see if it works. If it doesn't work, I'll give it up. To make a firm resolve, to really see it through. And then to see, are we really bringing about any transformation in our lives? So, to me, this is a very important and practical question. And I'll be very happy to have some discussion. If anybody wants to add anything or ask any questions, that's fine. I don't mind that at all. Now, the whole process of reflection goes back to the Upanishads. This is actually the type of spiritual practice that we find in the very early Vedantic tradition of the Upanishads. We have these 3 terms, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Shravana means first we have to listen to these teachings, spiritual teachings of Vedanta. In the old days, it meant basically this Tattvamasi, these Mahavakyas from the Upanishads that emphasize there's a perfect oneness between the individual soul and the Supreme Soul. So we're asked to hear these truths. And Shravana, it means that we listen to them with something called Shraddha. That means we have some reverence and respect and faith and humility, that we approach this subject with great seriousness, with the understanding that this has been done for centuries and centuries, and that this is a tremendous type of grace that we have to be able to hear these very deep, high spiritual truths. In the old days, it was very much restricted. It wasn't open to everyone to hear these things. Not everyone was considered qualified. Now that's all changed. Swami Vivekananda especially, he said, take these ideas and throw them broadcast. Whoever can accept them and understand them and utilize them, good for them. If they can, at least they'll have heard them. It reminds me of a nice incident in the life of Swami Vigyanananda. Swami Vigyanananda was another direct disciple of Sri Krishna. He used to give initiation to very small children, say 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, something like that. So somebody asked him, but can they really utilize this mantra that you're giving them at such a young age? And he said, if they can, at least they'll have it. It's like you give them a very valuable thing, they'll keep it in their pocket, and then later when they become old enough to realize how valuable it is, they'll have it. So that was his idea. So we have this Shravana, and then Manana. It means we reflect very deeply on these things. You all know this hymn that we heard, Avinash, fantastic job, beautiful, so beautifully chanted and everything, pronunciation was so wonderful and everything. Does anyone know what this means? This is called the 6 stanzas on Nirvana, composed by Shankaracharya. Avinash, what does it mean?
I am nothing, and then whatever is left out, I am that.
Perfect. Okay. This is called the path of Neti Neti, where we try to find out our true nature by eliminating everything we're not. And one of the lines there was, there's a Panchakosha, that I'm not these 5 sheets. So this is what's really meant. Shravana means that we're given this ultimate truth about our real nature, and then Manana, we reflect on it very deeply. That means that, what does it mean? If you say that I'm God, I'm one with God, what does it mean? I know I'm not one with God. It's a ridiculous statement. But we have Shraddha. It can't be ridiculous. This is, in the Shruti, in the scriptures, there has to be some deeper meaning to this. So then I ask myself, well, maybe when I say I am God, I'm not really understanding what's meant by God or by I. That I have to think, what is the real nature of the self? And then this path of Neti Neti means that we ask, am I this physical body? This is the Panchakosha idea, this Annamaya Kosha. Am I this physical body? And then we have to analyze that when I was very young, I had a baby's body. It's the body I have today, it's not hardly recognizable as the same body. But my sense of I is unchanging. I feel that I'm the same person that I was throughout a whole lifetime. So it can't be based on this physical body. I can have limbs cut off. I'm the same person, I know that. Only I say now I lost a limb. How about our senses? I can go blind. I'm still the same person, only before I could see, now I'm blind. So the Pranamaya Kosha, this also doesn't define us. Then Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, the mind. We think that how we had a sense of priorities and values when we were young, and how it changes as we get older. Our belief system may change, our understanding of things, our priorities in life, and sometimes they change very radically. That when I was young, I only cared to go to parties and have fun and everything. Now I'm ready to devote my life to God, as if I'm 2 different people. The mind has changed so much, but I am the same person. That I know that my mind has changed so much, so this I is the knower of even the changes of the mind and the intelligence, and then there's this Anandamaya Kosha. this sheath of bliss, which is functioning in the state of deep sleep. So this is that manana, that we reflect very deeply on the meaning of this statement that Tattvamasi, thou art that. So now I know, I recognize myself as the witness, as pure consciousness, something that transcends the body, mind, and senses. If we peel off all of these different layers and we try to find that little space within, which is the real self, once the layers are gone, we see that there's no little hole anymore. It's an infinite space. What is your name?
Samyuta.
Have you ever eaten a donut?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever see the size of the hole inside the donut? Yeah? And you can look at the shape of the hole inside the donut? What happens to the hole after you finish eating the donut?
No hole anymore.
It's not a hole anymore. What is it?
Nothing.
Space. Infinite space. So if you have a dozen donuts, then each one has its own hole. You eliminate the donut itself, then there aren't any separate holes anymore. There's only infinite space. This is called Ghatakasha and Mahakasha in the Vedantic terms, the space within the jar, and the Mahakasha, the infinite space. We think that the jar, we can quantify how much space is there inside the jar. But really, it's all based on the jar, not on space. Once the jar is gone, we realize that space was never defined or separated or defined in any manner by that jar itself. It was always infinite space, even now. So this is the real nature of the self. Now, what about God? We may have some understanding of God as we pray to God. God is the creator of the universe. This is all true, but this is all the same type of thing. These are all upatis. These are all extraneous to the real nature of God, because when this universe doesn't exist, creator doesn't exist. This idea of Ishvara is dependent upon the universe. Take the idea of a mother. Right? A mother is a woman, right? She's not a mother until the child is born. The child makes the mother, turns the woman into a mother. The woman, of course, is responsible for the child. The child is responsible for the motherhood of the woman. But the motherhood of the woman is not essential. Why? Because before the child was born, she wasn't a mother. Potentially a mother, she was a woman. And after the child is born, it's not that she's no longer a woman, she's a woman throughout. So one is the essential nature, and the other is the accidental nature, or the changeful nature. But the permanent nature will be pure consciousness. So that means that the space within the jar and the vast Mahakasha space are one and the same. So then we get a Tattvamasi. But this is only intellectual at this point. So we have Shravana Manana, then Nididhyasana. This means we have to meditate on these things. We have to go very deep within and try to feel our own existence. What does it mean to exist? In what sense do I feel that I exist throughout all eternity? That it's not dependent on any physical thing or any mental thing, that the sense of I is there. The pure consciousness is always there, so we meditate very deeply, and then it will flash one day. Ah, yes, I am that. So this is how this manana aspect, this reflection, has been utilized as the main spiritual practice of sadhana. This is the sadhana that we find in the Upanishads. Later, of course, we have different types of meditation and prayer and japa and everything, but this is specifically what we find on this jnana marga, this path of knowledge that we find in the Upanishads. Now, from a very practical point of view, this idea of reflection doesn't have to be such a very high, deep philosophical type of reflection. It can be also reflection on were we good today? Were we truthful? Were we honest today? Did we share with our friends today? We have all these other standards that we try to apply. Did I follow this idea of truthfulness? This is very important. Sri Ramakrishna says that in Kali Yuga, that the truthfulness is the main austerity of the Kali Yuga. If we can practice this truthfulness in mind, speech, and deed, and everything that we do, then we can realize God through that alone. He gives so much emphasis on this idea of truthfulness. So we can reflect back on the day. Was I hypocritical today? Was I authentic today? All of these different things. And sometimes in our meditation, it's good to do a little bit of this reflection, or at the end of the day. I have a nice quote from Swami Brahmananda. Swami Brahmananda was one of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, and the one most similar to Sri Ramakrishna in his personality and in his spiritual outlook and everything. And Sri Ramakrishna looked upon him as his spiritual son. He was the first president of our Bellarmut, of our order. He said, every night before you go to sleep, think for a while how much time you have spent in doing good deeds, and how much time you have wasted, how much time you have spent in meditation, and how much you have wasted in idleness. So we have this kind of a daily check, but then in addition to that, we can have kind of a yearly thing. This is why I like this idea of New Year's resolutions, because it's a little artificial, but still, it's a new start, a fresh slate, we can say. So then it's a very important time to do that. It's a time also when we can really see, did we live up to the standards that we have? Other traditions also look upon this as a time to ask for forgiveness. This, in the Jewish tradition, this New Year's corresponds with the time of the Day of Atonement, when we look back and say, yes, I realize I did things that I shouldn't have done, and I'll do my very best not to do them again. Sri Ramakrishna is very clear on this idea. Don't dwell on these things too much. He hated this idea that we call ourselves sinners. That's Swamiji also. He said, it's standing liable on mankind to call yourself a sinner. He said, you're children of God. So why call yourself a sinner? If you keep calling yourself a sinner, you'll believe that you're a sinner. So we don't dwell on it, but we recognize it, that we've done things we shouldn't have done. And we take this type of vow, this resolution, that we won't do them again. So these are all different types of ways we can utilize this idea of a kind of a fresh start. And we all know that we have our own special types of things that we have to deal with. That some of us get angry too easily and lose our temper. Some of us are lazy. Laziness is a funny thing. That we find that there are certain areas of life where we'll get up in the middle of the night to do things. We can be perfectly energetic, and other areas where we simply can't answer letters, emails. We put them in a drawer and everything. People are funny that way. We, just like you have compartments in a desk, we have compartments in our minds in a way. So yeah, I find with me that I love to keep our center very neat and clean. If anything is out of order, it really bothers me very much. But my room is a mess. So sometimes we're not consistent that way. So anyhow, we all have things to work on, particular things, but then there are kind of universal things, and that's what I want to start with now. These types of resolutions that will be helpful for all of us, and this will go directly to those vows that we take at the time of brahmacharya, our first set of vows, when we actually the brahmacharya is very important in our monastic order. We're considered members of the order only after we take our first vows. If you ask someone in the order, how many monks are there in the Ramakrishna order, it won't just be all of the sannyasis, all of those who take sannyasa, it'll be all who have taken brahmacharya. So once we've done that, we're really full members, even though we have our final vows left to take. The resolutions that we take can be broken down into 4 different categories. First one is spiritual practice. The second is the virtues and qualities that we try to cultivate in our daily lives. Then the third is how do we deal with other people? So interpersonal relations. And the fourth is what are our ultimate goals in life? So these are, it's not presented to us that way, but if we look at them, we can see. Now, this first resolution is to be very regular in our spiritual practice. And in spiritual life, this is probably the greatest aid in spiritual life if we can get established in a routine. And it's not as hard as people think. If we can get established in a routine, then we're set. Then we've reached some high ground. It's kind of a safety area. To be able to get up at the same time in the morning, to leave a certain period of time for our prayer, our worship, our meditation, our japa, all of these things, to leave a certain period of time for spiritual reading. These things are terribly important. The rest of the day, of course, we try to maintain that spiritual mood and spiritual attitude. This spiritual practice, it's like spinning a wheel. We give it a great big push so that the momentum of that will continue throughout the day, and then when we sit again for meditation, it won't have stopped. We'll give it another big push. So that the spiritual ideas, which we try to think of in a very intense manner during meditation, they'll remain with us. Of course, we have other things to do. We have our work and everything, so that it won't always be in the forefront, but it'll be behind everything, and it'll still be turning that way. Even with we do our japa, and even that can continue throughout the day if we're involved with something, work with other people. Of course, it'll go under the surface. If we have some time when there's nothing to read or anything, we do some manual work, it'll come to the surface of the mind. So this is called ajapa japa. This japa, it goes on continuously without end. If there's a break in it, it just goes below the surface. And even while we sleep, people who get established in this, even when we sleep, it goes on. The second we wake up, it's back. We're repeating it. So this getting established in a routine in spiritual life is very important. My own spiritual teacher, he used to say, bind yourself to a routine. Now, it sounds counterintuitive because we're aiming for freedom. We don't like this idea of bondage. But bind yourself to a routine leads to freedom. There's freedom from this wandering mind. If it's something that we don't question, we get up in the morning and say, yes, this is my time for meditation. We don't question it. Then it becomes smooth and easy. The mind is very free and clear. If every morning we get up and say, well, should I go to sleep? Should I get another hour of sleep? That we can convince ourselves. This is called rationalizing, by the way. We can say, yes, why should I struggle when I'm sleepy? If I sleep an extra hour, then I can sit for 15 minutes. But my mind will be clear because I won't be so tired. First of all, it doesn't work. I don't believe that that's helpful for anybody. And second of all, his mind will start playing tricks on us. It happened even with Holy Mother. The wife of Sri Ramakrishna, consort of Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, she was in the habit of getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, every day, no matter what. And then, 1 or 2 days, she was feeling unwell. She said, let me sleep a little bit later. And then the next day, the same thing came in. And she said after a few days, she realized that this is the way the mind plays tricks on us. This is how tamas enters into the mind. And because she saw that each time this tendency to not get up when she was supposed to became stronger. So then she made that resolve, that resolution, sankalpa. And after that, she was never tempted anymore. See, if we tell the mind, I don't care what you do, how many tricks you try to play to make me give up my routine, then the mind will give up. The mind won't do it anymore. The mind will help us, actually. And this is what it means in Gita. It says that this uncontrolled mind is our worst enemy, and this controlled mind is our best friend. And why Sri Ramakrishna says that this mature mind becomes the guru. We can trust that mind. The immature mind is not to be trusted. It's like the fox guarding the chickens in the chicken coop. It'll say, yes, trust me, I won't do anything, and then it'll end up eating all the chickens. Yeah. So this is the first thing, that we have a fixed routine. It should be something doable. It shouldn't be something that's too difficult. And it's something that we can actually increase in time, and we can change it around a little bit. In the beginning, we may sit for meditation for 15 minutes and feel that this is all we're capable of doing, and then as we go on, we increase it. If we get this real vairagya and this real longing for God realization, we might find it, yes, let me start getting up earlier every morning. And then we can get it established in that also. So this is one of the signs of seriousness in spiritual life. There's no spiritual life without spiritual practice. I don't care what people say. You know, now they have these polls and things where you have to listen, or you're religious, and now this category, spiritual but not religious but spiritual. People can say not religious but spiritual. If they don't do anything, then it's just talk. Spiritual life means spiritual practice. And there's no getting around it. We can say that, well, I practice, there's constant recollection, I do this and I do that. Everything is fooling ourselves. We have to have some discipline and some regularity in our spiritual life. And at the same time, not be obsessed with this idea, am I making spiritual practice? Right? We do it because it's a joy to do it. This is really what we want to do in life. This is important to us. And then whatever comes, comes. We have to apply these principles of karma yoga even to our spiritual life. I call on God, that's my part of the bargain. Then it's up to God to give whatever God wants to give. I accept it, doesn't matter. Okay, then we get to these different virtues. And as I say, all of the brahmacharis, we repeat all of these things together, that we resolve that above all, we must be calm, peaceful, and cheerful at all times. Calm, peaceful, and cheerful at all times. Now remember, this is Swami Ramakrishnananda, one of the great disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. These were the things that he felt were important. So that means that we don't react so much to external things. We try to keep within ourselves and find that peace within ourselves. If we look for peace outside of ourselves, we won't find it. If we look for calm outside, we won't find it. We have to be that little eye of the storm within to find that area of peace within, so that we're not affected by external things, so that if somebody comes up and slaps us in the face or calls us some funny names and everything, we'll say, yes, probably you're right. That's the way I am. What can I do? We won't react in the way that people normally react, because we don't have to. The problem with most of us is that reaction is automatic. And we want to reach that stage of life where we choose how to react. You know, the famous story of Buddha, that somebody came to him, was very angry. And he said, you did this and you did that, and you told these people to do this, and this one left his family and all of that. What kind of man are you? Yes, abused him right and left. And then Buddha was just listening, completely unmoved. And then he said to him, let me ask you a question. He said, okay. He said, if someone offers you a gift and you don't accept that gift, what happens to it? He said, it remains with the person who wanted to give it. And he said, in the same way that you're offering me the gift of all this abuse, but I'm not accepting it. Let it remain with you. I'm not accepting it. Yeah. You know, somebody may say that somebody insulted me. Did you ever stop and think that nobody can insult us if we don't get insulted? Right? No matter what you say about me, you can say the worst possible things. You're not insulting me unless I get insulted. Right? We all know some people, very simple people. They're very good-hearted, simple people. You really can't insult them. Whatever you say, they'll laugh and say, yes, I know, I'm not such a bright person. I'm not so, my singing voice isn't very good. I can't do this, I can't do that. What can I do? Like that. Somebody else, if they have this Abhiman, if they think that deep down, yes, I'm a great pundit, how dare you question that, then they'll get insulted just like that. So if we can develop this simplicity, and if we can develop really this understanding that if I get angry, if I react, I'm not doing anything that will getting back at that person. That means that person has beat me twice. Once he did it, the second time I did it to myself. Right? First time that person is abusing me, the second time, I'm making my mind upset. So what's the gain in that? There's no gain in that. So we learn to practice this, to be calm, peaceful, and cheerful at all times. Swami Vivekananda said once, if you can't be cheerful, then stay in your own room. Don't make other people have to look at that nasty, sour face if you can't be cheerful. So we can always be cheerful. We may not feel it within, but we should try. And it all goes back to this idea, act but don't react. If it's a reaction, then it's automatic. If it's automatic, then it's bondage. Then there's no freedom there. We want to be free. We want this freedom to not react. So this is one of those first things. Then, to be careful about our speech. We have to remember that it can be very hurtful, the things that we say to other people. We have this austerity of speech. This in Gita, we have these different tapasyas. There's the tapas, different types of austerities of body, of mind, of speech. And truthfulness in speech is not enough. Because sometimes we can hurt people. We can say something truthful, but it can be something that we're better off not saying. So we have this idea that it has to be hitakara and priya. We have these two terms in Gita. It has to be pleasant. Our speech has to be pleasant. And hitakara, it has to conduce to the well-being of the other person. We had an old monk in Trabuco Canyon where I joined. This is in California. And sometimes if I said something that I probably shouldn't have said, he would say to me, and to other people also, was it true? Was it pleasant? Was it necessary? So this is the test. We should, if something is true, that doesn't mean that we should say it. It has to be true, it has to be pleasant. Even if it's true and pleasant, it doesn't mean we should say it. It has to be necessary. Because most of the time we say things it's not necessary, or we say it only to make ourselves look good. We have all different hidden motives for the things that we say. Very often it can be truthful. It can be perfectly truthful, and yet it's not very authentic. That means there's some hypocrisy behind it, or we're doing it with a hidden ulterior motive. We want people to think, oh, what an unselfish person, what a kind person this is, and everything. And we don't really feel it deep within. That's also not being truthful. So it's not a very simple thing that is it true or is it a lie? It's a much more subtle type of thing. So this is why we find actually this practice of silence. This is also vrata, this mono vrata, this practice of silence is very good because we see this tendency of the mind and sometimes a very, very strong desire of the mind to say something. when there's no need to say it. And after a while, we realize that speech is the way we try to tell other people who we are. It's a very interesting concept. Because I can show you who I am a little bit by the dress that I wear, a little bit by the things that I do, but if I want you to really see who is this person within, I do it by the things that I say. So there's a little ego involved there. This little desire, look at me, this is who I am. If we can get rid of that, then we realize that, why should we care so much what people think about us? And why is it necessary for me to say, suppose somebody said something that's wrong, and then I want to say, oh, you made a mistake there, this should really be this rather than that. Is it necessary? Am I helping that person? I may convince myself that I've done a favor to that person, but half the time it's to make us feel better. So that person, that person knew that Sanskrit verse and knew that I made a mistake and everything. I saw this. I attended a conference in Providence on Thursday, and someone made a presentation, and he had put a Sanskrit verse on the screen. It was there for everyone to see, and there was a mistake in it. I could see it everywhere. There were all these Sanskrit scholars there, and you could see that there were half a dozen of them that they just couldn't bear not telling him that you made a mistake. It could have, what's the harm? It could have been, it just embarrassed him really. They could have said afterwards also, but to do it in front of everybody. So we see that little hidden motive is there involved in speech. So when we practice silence, we get to watch the mind and see what is that incentive, what is that motive for the things that we say and the way that we say things. And half the time we'll find that we're trying to impress people, or we're trying to give them a certain image, or present a certain image of ourselves to them, which may be true, may not be true, it may be who we really think we are or who we would like to be, but there's a little bit of inauthenticity to all of this. Okay, so this was the this second virtue. First was this calm, peaceful, cheerful nature, then be careful about our speech, and then practice moderation. This is Madhyamanta. This is a great teaching of the Buddha, that we should practice moderation in food, recreation, and work. And then we find in other things, in sleep, even in spiritual life, occasionally we may want to do some very austere things. We may want to do some fasting or vigil, stay up all night, Shivratri night or something like that. But in general, it's best to practice this moderation. In fact, wherever you see the sannyasi, the monk, practicing renunciation of something, it really means moderation for that householder. So you see all of this emphasis on the vairagya and leading a perfectly celibate life. For the householder, it means just a life of moderation, not going too far in any direction like that, to follow this middle path. And we find that when we can practice this self-control, because most of the time the problem is not too little, the problem is too much. It's not that we have a great tendency to want to eat too little, but to eat too much. To not have enough of sweets, but to have too much of sweets. So if we can learn this self-control, then we find that it changes our whole image of ourselves. I heard a very wonderful statement once that has remained with me for a long time, that this self-control equals self-respect. People without self-control generally have a poor self-image. They don't have that self-respect. Those who can really practice this type of self-control we'll feel better about ourselves if we can do that. Then we resolve, try to see the best in others. If we must see faults, we should look at our own faults. And yeah, this is another great problem, this is fault finding. This, of course, was the great teaching of the Holy Mother. Okay, this was what's known as the final teaching of the Holy Mother. When she was practically on her deathbed, a few days before she passed away, one woman devotee came to see her, and she said to her, listen, my child, if you want peace of mind, then karo dosh dakho na. There's a Bengali phrase which is a little difficult to translate. Sometimes it says, don't find fault with others, or don't see the faults of others. There's a little difference there. Holy Mother herself used to say that I've reached that stage where I simply don't see the faults of others. And she would say, there are enough people in this world to see the faults of others, you don't need me to do it. But for us, this is impossible. What we have to do is not look for the faults of others, to give up this habit of fault finding. And we find also that generally the faults that we see in others are things that we have in ourselves, and we may have them worse in ourselves. And whenever this tendency comes to see the faults of others, then what should we do? Say, I have plenty of things wrong with me. Why should I look at somebody else's faults? I can look to my own faults and then try to change them also. So this idea of finding fault is very important. She said, I tell you, my child, if you want peace of mind, do not find fault with others. Rather, see your own fault. Then she says, learn to make the world your own. No one is a stranger, my child. The whole world is your own. And then, I cannot see other faults. I am simply not made that way. When she was young, she said that she used to pray. She used to pray to the moon. That Mother, make my heart as pure as the moonlight. Let me not see anybody's faults. And then she would say sometimes, you know, there's a little darkness in the moon. We call it, what do we call it here? The man in the moon. They call it, in India, it's supposed to look like a rabbit, right? This shashi, yeah. So, she said, even on the moon there's a little stain, make my heart stainless. So she would pray, Mother, let me not see the faults of others, and she said it actually happened with her. So she said, surely the world will not come to an end if I refrain from doing so. There are enough people always ready to criticize others. So this is a great thing if we can learn not to see the faults of others. Now, how do we do it? There's a very nice story that's told by Swami Brahmananda. It was something that he heard from a wandering sadhu in Gujarat. He tells us that when he was in his wandering days, that he heard this story about a saint and a scorpion. Does anyone know the story? Okay. There was a holy man who was sitting on the bank of a river and sitting in meditation. So this holy man is deep in meditation, and a scorpion comes and stings him right on the head. And just reflexively, he goes like that because of the sting, and the scorpion falls in the water. So then he sees that the scorpion is drowning. So what does he do? He scoops it up and puts it on the bank so that it won't drown, and goes back for meditation. Then what happens, you know? Stings him again. Then what happens? Again, he goes into the water. Then he sees again he's drowning, so he scoops him out, and it happens a third time. And the fourth time, he scoops him out and he takes him to a distant place, so he can't sting him anymore. Now, someone was watching this whole thing, and he said to this holy man, he said, I don't understand your behavior. And he said, what is that? He said that each time the scorpion stung you, and each time you saved it. Why would you save it when it was you knew it was that it would sting you again that way? So he made a very great statement. He said, look, it's the nature of a scorpion to sting, and it's the nature of a sadhu to do good. So why should I change my nature because of the nature of the scorpion? So what do we learn from this? That we don't have to look, even the stinging of the scorpion, we don't have to say that the scorpion is terrible, we shouldn't help the scorpion, it's a bad person, all of that. We simply say that this is the dharma or guna. See, we have two terms. One is dosha and one is guna. Now look at the difference in our attitude. if we say that this is a defect, that this is some evil tendency, if we say that, or if we say, this is the natural thing, this is the nature of the person, then we see there's no judgment put on it. We're not seeing it as a fault. We're accepting it for what it is. Now, the other important part of this is that we shouldn't always feel that we're the holy person and the other person is the scorpion. Sometimes we're the scorpion. And we know that we've done things, and we hope the other person will be the saintly person and won't find fault. So we have to look upon ourselves that way also. That I see I have this tendency to do things. I'm not an evil person, but I have this tendency sometimes to be a little selfish, to not share with other people. But I won't look at it in the sense that, oh, I'm a terrible person, that is a terrible fault. It's a terrible it's a bad tendency. It's not if it's fault, that means it's something permanent. If it's something that's natural to me, then that doesn't mean it's essential to me. That means that I have this natural tendency to react that way, but I can change. Scorpion can change. We can all give up these bad habits and everything. So this is a very nice way. If we see something, we see somebody acting in a way that we think is really just inhuman even, we can simply say, you know, the person is like that. This person also suffers because of that tendency. We shouldn't look down on that person because of that. If I were in that person's condition, and I had that same tendency, and I grew up the same way, and everything was the same, perhaps I would be even worse. It's true, right? So anyhow, these are all different ways of trying to practice this, not seeing the faults of others. Then, then avoid self-praise, or avoid seeking praise from others. We should do things because we feel it's the right thing to do. Whether somebody sees it or not, or recognizes it or not, or praises us or not, shouldn't make any difference whatsoever. We should get satisfaction just from knowing that we did what we think is the right thing. And we should also know that whatever benefit we get from it becomes less if we seek praise from other people. It spoils it a little bit, even. We want to go to a soup kitchen and serve poor people and everything, that's fine. We want to come back and tell everybody, oh, you know, I spent the whole morning serving poor people and everything. We say it so that people will think, oh, what a wonderful person. Then it spoils the whole thing. We should do it because we have some real sincere desire to help people less fortunate than us, and not care whether people know about it or whether people praise us. Sometimes we see people, really good people, they get embarrassed by praise. And we know that that's not their motive at all. So this is avoid self-praise. There's a very beautiful Sanskrit hymn that was composed by Chaitanya Deva. And it says, Amanina manadena kirtaniya sada hari. That if we really want to worship God, then we have to have these two things. Amana, that means we have to be free from pride ourselves, and manada, that means we have to give everyone their due. We have to show respect to everyone else, and not demand respect or care for respect from other people. So this humility, this is very important in spiritual life. Okay, now we get to these resolutions with regard to work. And work means everything. Work doesn't mean simply, you know, going to the office in the morning. If we're students, it means going to school. It means taking exams. If it's parents, it means raising the children. If it's children, it means honoring and respecting the parents. We have to do everything to the best of our ability. Now we know in Karma Yoga, we're told don't care about the results. This is a very, very misleading statement. We should never say that we don't care for the results. We don't want to be attached to the results. But we shouldn't do anything unless we start out with the idea that we want to be successful. Why will anybody do anything unless they want to be successful? Say we're a scientist, we're doing research, we're looking for a cure for cancer. Who will go into that field and do experiments and everything if they're not sincerely trying their very best to be successful? Now, what we want to avoid is this ulterior motive, that I'll become famous, I'll make a lot of money, I'll start my own pharmacy, all of that. That's what we want to avoid. And we want to avoid this feeling that my happiness or unhappiness will depend on the success or failure of the experiment. If it doesn't work, we say, I tried my best, that's all. There's a phrase that we have when we take these vows. It's apala udaya, this udaya, this arising of fruits, this apalodaya. This means that we have to see the job through to the very end. Now, we're not supposed to be attached to the fruit, but we can't do it halfway. We have to see it to the very end. That means sometimes we do a job, that means also we have to clean up after ourselves. I do a lot of work in the woodworking shop. That's kind of my hobby. I build things. And we see a lot of people, they'll finish a job and they'll leave and everything's a mess. You finish a job, you clean up. You cook something in the kitchen, that means afterwards you wash everything, you clean off the stove, the sink and everything, so that everything is perfect for the next person who comes. But non-attachment to the fruits of the work, that means that it's out of our hands. We know this. And sometimes when the experiment doesn't work, it's even helpful. And we've eliminated one thing and we'll go in a different direction. We know that why it didn't work that way. And so we have to work as efficiently as possible, work with respect for the job that we do. Holy Mother, she scolded somebody, they swept the floor and threw the broom in the corner. She said, no, my child, even the broom is worthy of respect. This is something that you use to help you clean things. You'll want to use it again. Don't put it back nicely and everything. So we have to have respect for the job. We have to understand that there's no such thing as high work and low work. The work that the person does sweeping the streets is equally valuable for society as the work that the doctor does serving patients. Swami Vivekananda said once that you take all of these wealthy people of Calcutta and you let them go on vacation for a week, no one will care. You take the garbage collector in Calcutta, let them go on strike for one day, everything falls apart. The city's a complete mess. Within a week you'll have plague that way. So it's not the type of work we do, it's the attitude that we have. So they say, Swe Swe Karmani Abhirata Samsiddhim Labhate Naraha. So Swe Swe Karmani, whatever job anybody does, whether the high or what we consider high or low, in the caste days, of course, it meant whether it's the work of a Shudra or the work of a Brahmin, it doesn't make any difference, that one will attain the highest, one can achieve perfection, one can attain liberation. Right? So this work is all a question of how we approach it. There's a very wonderful thing called this Vyadha Gita. We put on a play at a summer camp about that. And this Dharma Vyadha, this righteous butcher who attained illumination by doing his work. We consider a butcher to be a very low work. They're killing animals and cutting them and everything. But because he did it with great reverence, he did it as duty, he did it in order to serve society and his family, he attained the same illumination. So, all of these things are connected with this idea of work. We resolve to work with devotion, to do it as worship, to not care for the results, to not judge whether high work or low work, to be goal-oriented but not reward-oriented. Goal-oriented. We want to do it perfectly, we want to be successful, but we don't care for any reward from it. That if it's successful, that's enough reward for us. So we don't care whether anybody knows about it or not. Then, we have the attitude towards others. In the Ramakrishna order tradition, we don't simply have this idea that we're seeking liberation and knowledge and all of that. that we have to work for the welfare of others, seeing God in them, that we try to serve others that way. This is what Swamiji called this service of Jiva, is worship of Shiva, because we try to see the divine dwelling within each and every being, and that means the best way to serve is to worship God that way is to serve. Swami Vivekananda thought that this seeing God dwelling in human beings was the highest type of worship. He has a very beautiful poem where he says, this is the living God standing before you. Worship this living God. Break all other idols. Now, not that he was against image worship or anything like that. But his point was that what is wonderful, you go down and bow down at a shrine before an image, and then you don't even look at the beggars and poor people after that. So he said that's the highest type of worship. Has anyone been to Rameshwaram? Okay. Did you notice that there's a big main gate there that you go through, and there's something written on the sides of that gate? Did anyone notice that?
Forgot.
If you go again, this was, see, when Swami Vivekananda returned from the West, his first trip to the West, he came back in 1897. The first place where he landed in India was Rameshwaram, and he went to the temple there, and there was a big reception for him, and they gave a nice speech and everything, and then he gave his reply to that address, and there he talked about if your worship of Shiva is just in the image, then this is just preliminary worship. Real worship of Shiva is seeing Shiva dwelling within all beings. And they took these words of Swamiji and engraved them on the side of the main gate. It's really remarkable, because if you read it, it can be taken as a kind of rebuke of temple worship. But they understood how important it was, that's preliminary. That we of course offer our worship to Shiva, but if we don't see Shiva dwelling within all beings, if we don't see God dwelling within everyone, and seeing God within everyone, if we don't try to serve others, then we haven't even taken the first step in religion. So Swamiji thought this was the most important. Even Sri Ramakrishna, there was a period of his life when he went into ecstasy and all these ideas. Everything was internal. He would go to the Bhava Samadhi and everything. And then he had an accident. He fell and he broke his arm. And he broke his arm because he was walking near the bank of the Ganges. There was a railing there. And he suddenly was thinking about this Jagannath Puri and went into some ecstatic mood. And trying to embrace the image, he fell down and broke his arm. So after that, he said, it was as if the Divine Mother were telling me, forget about seeing God in ecstasy, now see God in human beings. He said this, Nada Lila is the final word in spiritual life, to see God dwelling in all human beings. Nada Lila, a very beautiful term, that God's sporting as human beings. So he said, from that time onward, now I see that this is the highest vision that we can have. And we see at the end of his life, he would be sitting in a room full of people, say a Kashipur garden house. All the devotees would be sitting there. And he would say, I see that Rama alone is sitting here dwelling within all these beings. Sometimes he would say, I see Sita alone within all women, Rama alone within all men. That way. So, if we have that understanding, then we approach people differently. We really feel that we're face to face with the divine, God dwelling within all beings. We feel that reverence. We feel it's a tremendous privilege to serve other people. A privilege. Swamiji said, let the giver bow down and seek permission to serve, and let the receiver grant that permission. So we reverse it. We think that I'm helping someone, they should be grateful to me. No, we should be grateful for the privilege of serving others. So this is that idea, this attitude towards others, and it could be done in all different ways. Either we can really do some type of social service work. So take some time off and go to a soup kitchen, go to the orphanage, people go to prisons, they do all sorts of things, help drive elderly people, or just in our everyday attitude towards others. We do it with family members. When the mother is serving the child, the thing is a baby Gopal, that way to see the divine. Then, last, goal of life. That we should never lose sight of the fact that the ultimate goal of life is God realization or self-realization, however we understand it. This removal of ignorance, the knowledge of our true nature. We have everyone will have a different approach to it and a different understanding of what it means. That whatever other goals we have, they're important, but they're not ultimate. And they should all be kind of under the umbrella of this ultimate goal of life. That means that while we're doing whatever work we're doing it as an offering. We're doing it, we know it's purifying the heart and all of these things. Everything comes under that. Otherwise, the Gita has this expression, Bahushaka Yanantascha. Otherwise, the things we do, they're like endless branches that keep going out. And Ananta, there's no end to this. We get involved in one thing after another, and they draw the mind outward. This is one way of keeping everything under this one umbrella, so that everything we do ultimately becomes part of our spiritual life and spiritual practice. There's a cohesiveness to it. There's a one steady theme throughout the whole lifetime. Variations on the theme is fine, but one theme. Otherwise, we jump from one thing to another. There's no cohesion that way. There's no integration in our life. So we take this resolve that we'll continually strive for perfection, and at the same time not give in to this temptation to try to teach other people, or to say that you're wasting your life, that this is the real goal of life. Somehow I'm in a position where I know more than you do, and I can. So this is a temptation for some time, and it quotes, when we do recite this resolve, it quotes this line from the Upanishad. Otherwise, it's like the blind leading the blind. We think we're in a position to help other people. We ourselves are in need of help that way. So this is basically different types of resolutions that we make. Now there's just one final thing I'll mention. We may have a few minutes for questions also. There's something called this Purnahuti, this final sankalpa that we take at the end when we do the puja, at the end of any big worship. Then we have this, it's a type of, ahuti means an offering, a complete, perfect offering of everything. And it's very, very beautiful. I'll just read this English translation. It says, "Whatever I may have done, said, or thought, with my body, mind, senses, or intellect, either in waking, dreaming, or deep sleep, may all that be an offering to the divine. I offer myself and all I have at the feet of the Lord." So this is that ultimate sankalpa or resolution. May everything we do be done as an offering. And then we find that the whole life is changed. That our whole priority system is changed. And our way of deciding whether something was successful or unsuccessful, it changes. Everything becomes a question of, are we true to that state of mind, to that devotional feeling, that we only have one reason for doing anything, that we want to do it as an offering, and that means we want to do it perfectly, we want to see it through to the very end, we want to do it with care, efficiency, devotion, love, all of that, and we get a tremendous type of satisfaction out of that. And we know that it doesn't matter if it's perfect or not. We're human beings, we won't do things perfectly. But if we feel that we did our best, that we really tried, that we were sincere, the sincerity really, if we can be sincere in life, then we can go to bed at night with a clear mind. It's very, very important that way. So let me stop here. There's some more things, but I think this is enough food for thought. And then if anybody would like to ask anything or add anything, please don't be shy. Yes?
How do you practice not reacting to others?
I think one of the first things is that we have to recognize that that we ourselves suffer from it. If we, in any other thing, if we know that we're doing something that is bad for us, we'll stop. I mean, if we're doing something and we see that each time we keep hitting ourselves and we're bleeding and we keep doing it over and over and over again, we'll stop doing it, right? But when it comes to reacting and getting angry, losing our temper, we know that it's hurting us, that we feel bad afterwards, that we completely lost our sense of discrimination, our self-control and everything, but we do it over and over again. Because somehow, either we feel that we're helpless, or we feel, especially with anger is the worst thing. Anger is poison. Somehow we feel that we're justified in getting angry. Now, if we can just convince ourselves that, well, justified or not, we're suffering because of it. So the first thing is that we have to realize that we will be helping ourselves if we can get rid of this automatic reaction. Then we have to try to get established in this idea that we are the witness. Watch the mind. We can see that, what does it mean when I get angry? It means that, you know, this idea of vritti. Vritti is just a modification of the mind, a little wave, a little ripple that takes place in the mind. That anger, when I'm angry, it simply means that this anger, vritti, has arisen in the chitta of the mind. I didn't get angry. The mind got disturbed somehow. I'm watching the mind. If I can remain in that mindset, that I'm the witness, then automatically I'll see that the mind will not react, that vritti won't arise with the same strength that it has. Gradually it'll become less and less and less. These things are hard to eliminate completely. We do it in baby steps. We do it little by little so that the reaction becomes less and less and less. You know, when we're kids, we're told that if you feel angry, count to 10 first before you say anything. It's very good. It gives us a chance because as soon as we're angry, we've lost our discrimination. We'll say things that we know, even while we're saying it, we'll know that we shouldn't be saying it. If we wait, then we give ourselves a chance to catch ourselves that way. Yeah, it's funny. People who really lose their temper, they see red and everything. It's almost as if they're separated from themselves. I know because I used to have the bad temper. Not all the time, but occasionally. And it's as if, you know, we're watching ourselves reacting and being completely out of control. I'm watching, that means that, not in the good sense, not watching in the sense that I'm detached from it, watching in the sense that my hands are tied, that I can't do anything. I know that I'm going to say something that I'm going to regret later. But I feel helpless to do it. So, if we can catch ourselves, even just get into that habit of waiting before we say anything, then even that is helpful. But we have to really have some strong desire to change. If we really see that we react too quickly to things, that we say things we shouldn't say, and all of that, if we really see that this is harmful for us. Yeah, we think we're getting back at the other person, right? Justifiable anger that way. We think we're getting back at them, we're just hurting ourselves. So we have to understand that, number one. And then number two, gradually just try to be a little detached from that, be the witness of it. Watch the mind, not identify with the mind, but feel that we're in control, that we don't automatically have to react that way.
Excuse me, how practical is it in many circumstances? Even Lord Krishna himself couldn't control his temper many times. There's a story of Shishupala who was insulting all the time. He became angry and killed him.
Mhm.
When Bhishma was in Battle of Kurukshetra, teased him deliberately, he did become angry. See, when Lord Krishna could not control his temper, how easy or practical is it for us?
It's not easy. So this is how we know it's not easy. When even great souls can lose their temper from time to time, it's excusable. It's not easy, but it's not practical. That's the point. That it's not helpful. We can say that I'm human. You should excuse me for this. That this is the way people react. We can say we know that. We're trying to become perfect. Not that we will, but if we know that this is something that we regret afterwards, that we get in trouble for it and everything, and we know that we can excuse ourselves by saying that, well, everybody does it. Even Sri Krishna got angry. Even Thakur got angry once or twice, and Swamiji had a bad temper and everything, so we can do it. Once somebody was saying that Bhishma had a vision of hell or something like that, and Thakur got very angry. He said, look at all of the wonderful things that you could have said about him and positive things. You picked the one thing that's a negative thing. So we can always say, you take the greatest person in the world, we can always say, well, they had this little fault. Why should we do that? We should emulate the best part of things. So to answer your question, we see that, we understand that it's excusable. Even, Sri Ramakrishna said, even these divine incarnations, they're born with this human mind. He used to say, even Rama wept for Sita. Right? So he used to say this, Poncho Bhute, Fade, Brahma Pade Kande. When Brahman falls into the snare of these 5 elements, that means this cage of the body, he weeps. He takes on some human. So even Sri Krishna will have some human element to his personality. And his anger, nobody is free from it 100%. We may find a few rare souls that it's very hard to get them angry, but for the most part, anger is something that's common to everybody. That doesn't mean that we should live with it. Right? There are many things that we can excuse. Of course we can excuse it. And we can excuse ourselves. I got angry. If you had heard what that person said, you would have gotten angry also. Okay, we know that. That's 100% true. But if I could have somehow not gotten angry, and I could have seen it with a little perspective and distance, then it would have been much better for me. So we understand both things. But the second one is the practical one. The first one is we can say that the excusable one. Yeah, it's certainly excusable if we lose our temper from time to time, but it's certainly better if we don't. So we're striving to realize a very high ideal. Yeah.
In Gita, there's a very good sentence there. Obhashana tu konteo boyagina jagvajhati. Practice and avoid. That's the way to avoid this confrontation. Rather than reacting, practice to avoid the confrontation, but sooner or later you will conquer it.
This Abhyasa Yoga, this is when Arjuna asked Krishna how to control the mind. He said his mind is very hard to control. So Sri Krishna said that, yes, undoubtedly it's hard to control all of these things. To control the mind, to control anger, all of the passions and everything, it's very hard to do. But he said there are 2 things. One is that we have to understand that we'll fail from time to time, but we have to keep trying. Each time we fail, we say that, well, if I'd only done this, and we observe the mind, and then we say, yes, I was a little better this time, and we, through this Abhyasa Yoga, practice over and over again, we start to get a little control. Now there's Vairagya. We very often find that when we want to control the mind, why can't we control the mind? Because it's being pulled outward. We're trying to make the mind go inward, but the mind is being tempted by all sorts of desires and things. Unless we can control that, unless we can control this tendency of the mind to desire, to enjoy things, to possess things. It will be very difficult to place this mind on this internal divinity within, and we're trying to do. Now, Sri Ramakrishna adds something that's very important. Whenever he talks about Vairagya, Vairagya really means dispassion. He says that if you simply try to practice dispassion, you won't be able to do it. If we simply try to eliminate all of these desires for worldly enjoyment, we can't do it. He said you have to practice this anuraga. That means have this an equal, if not stronger, desire for God realization, or for the truth, or for attaining that state of peace. If that's stronger, then the other will naturally fall off. So this was always his way of looking at that. If we realize that the goal of life is God realization, then where is room for worrying about what somebody else says and getting angry and all of that? So this is also helpful. Yes. Yes.
You said the goal of life is God realization. What exactly it means? How do you realize God?
Yeah, this
What do you
term God realization, of course, is from a devotional point of view. In the Upanishads, they'll talk more about self-realization or enlightenment in Buddhist tradition, nirvana, something like that. What it means, and of course, when we say that we know what it means, this is strictly from the outside in. We won't know what it means till we experience it. But it means that there's some type of experience that we have. It has to be an experience, anubhuti. It has to be something that we directly experience, some type of realization that comes as a result of some type of purification of the heart, and is so strong and so powerful that it burns up all of this remaining past karma, that it removes all of our doubts, and all of the knots and twists of the heart get untied. We have these three things. This is Mundaka Upanishad. This Chityanti Sarva Samshaya, all of the doubts are gone. Vidyanti Sarva, these are the Hridaya Granthis, all of the knots of the heart are undone, all of the doubts disappear, and all of the karma, which would have led to a new birth, is burnt up. So we have two things. One is that we attain a state of perfect freedom, perfect joy and bliss, where we live in the world, but we're not attached to the world. Nothing can touch us. Where we have reached a state of safety, where the world can't tempt us anymore. We can still live in the world, we can act in the world, we can do everything, but we've reached that state where we have that safe region within the heart where we can withdraw to, where nothing will affect us that way. So this is the first thing. The second thing is that when the body falls, there's no karma, anything left to cause it to take the soul to take another body. So we have two things. One is called this videha mukti, and the other is this final. First is jivan mukti, and the second is videha mukti. Jivan mukti, that means we have attained perfect liberation, salvation, perfection, whatever it is, while living in the body. And that will continue until the body falls, and then we have videha mukti. When the body is gone, then we merge in Brahman, or we attain some state of final liberation. The different schools have different ways of understanding it. Some will say we go to some heaven where we live in joy with God for eternity. Some will say that we realize that the individual self was always Brahman. Some will say the individual soul, it merges like a drop of water into the ocean and becomes one with it. Whatever it is, in those traditions that believe in reincarnation, this means it puts an end to this round of birth and death. So we get this videha mukti, and before that we're perfectly free. We attain that state of jivan mukti. Even while living in the world, we're perfectly free. That means that all of our samskaras get changed. Our ego This ego becomes just an appearance. The ego has the power to bind us. For the free soul, God-realized soul, it doesn't bind. Swami Krishna gives two very nice examples. One, if we take a string and we burn that string, that it'll look like the string. You'll see ash. It'll be in the same shape. If the string was curled, then that'll be curled. It'll look like it, but you can't use it to tie anything. It simply has the appearance of it, and if you blow on it, it'll just go away. Then he says it's like a sword. You know, this Poroshmani, or Chintamani, this mythical stone that if you touch any base metal to it, it turns into gold. So he says if you take a sword is made of very hard steel. It can be used to cut things and everything. If you take it and touch it to this stone, philosopher's stone, it turns into gold. It has the same appearance, but you can't use it to injure anyone, to fight anyone, because it's too soft. The metal is too soft that way. So we have all of these things. He says that God-realized soul will never take a fall, like a dancer that never misses a beat, takes a false step. He gives all sorts of different examples like that. But the main thing is that it will lead to the final liberation, and that it requires some conscious and transforming experience. Whether it's samadhi, it may be samadhi, it may be through a devotional path, it may be just through this flash, we realize our own true nature. It can come in all sorts of different ways. Sri Ramakrishna talks about this sadhana siddhi, that this perfection that comes through spiritual practice, and then he talks about even swapna siddha, someone who becomes perfect in dream. All different types. Hఠāt siddha, something that just all of a sudden it happens. So some it's a long, gradual struggle, some kripa siddha, just by grace, divine grace. We don't know why or how it happens, that they have some enlightenment. But it has to be some conscious experience of truth, or of our real nature, or our understanding of the divinity within, that we are one with that. Something that frees us, that frees the mind. It transforms our way of thinking. Everything gets changed, gets radically changed and transformed, so that there's nothing to bind us anymore. What the real experience is like, we won't know until we have it, and it may not be the same for everyone. Exactly the same. So shall we stop here?
Go. Yeah. Any more questions?
Anyone else?
I just don't want to
Okay, sure.
see the divine in everybody. There are some people it's very hard to do that.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard for people to see the divine in us also. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. No, the point is that we know that we have these coverings. Some people, if there's an excess of tamas, that divine light barely shines through. But it's there. We shouldn't think that if we have a black lampshade over the light, we don't see any light, that light isn't there. The divinity is there, and that potential for that individual to change is also there. Now, Sri Ramakrishna makes it very clear that God dwells within the tiger also, but we don't embrace the tiger. We have to be sensible. But we don't dismiss anybody. We try to at least give proper respect to everyone, whether it's a criminal, or whether it's a beggar in the street, or whether it's a highly acclaimed scientist. It doesn't matter. That each one represents a different type of manifestation of the divine. Some with an excess of tamas, some with an excess of sattva. Most of us with a combination of all of them, that way. So we recognize that this human mind is not perfect. It's this mind that will have these tendencies that make us feel that, yeah, I don't even want to be in the same room with this person. And sometimes, especially at the beginning of spiritual life, we do avoid people. We do seek out holy company. We seek the company of people who think in the way we do, have the same goals, but we don't look down on anyone, that's all. And if we can be of any service to them, of any help to them without that feeling of pride at least, then we should try to do that. But recognize that, as Swamiji says, each soul is potentially divine. The potential is there within each and every person to ultimately realize their own divinity. And we, of course, believe that sooner or later each and every person will, whether in this lifetime or the next or after many, that each and every person will attain that liberation because we're already perfect. It's just this covering the mind that prevents us from understanding that. Yes?
I have my divine mouse story.
Okay.
We have a mouse in our house.
Uh-huh.
We live near the woods, so. I'm like, I cannot. I saw the mouse. We saw eye to eye. The minute I saw the mouse saw me, I said, I can't kill the mouse. People are like, poison the mouse. He's vermin. Kill the mouse. I says, I can't kill the mouse. Because I was one with the mouse. The mouse just living his, he's living his thing, his God realization, getting food for his little family. I'm trying to, of course, relocate the mouse.
Yes, yes.
So I don't feel bad about
Yeah.
it or anything.
Yeah.
But even creatures, it's like.
Oh,
I don't know.
absolutely. Yeah.
So
When,
this mouse thing's been going on for about a month, and
Yeah.
it's still there.
yeah. We have mice at our center also. And so we've had to deal with this whole
Do you kill your
problem.
mice?
We try to use things that will make them go outside.
Right, I
Yeah.
just can't kill the
But
mouse.
we had these sticky things once.
Yeah. They trap them.
Yeah, and one mouse got stuck on it.
You
And,
couldn't
and
unstick them.
I did.
You
I-
did, thank
Yeah,
God.
very carefully, and I felt so bad
I
about it.
bet you did, I feel
Yeah.
bad too.
Yeah, and they're
But
so
they have the
sweet.
same right I have,
Yes,
to live their little
Yes.
life, or
So-
their life, not even little life,
Yeah.
but their mouse life.
yeah.
How-
No, I'm glad you brought this
Yeah.
up because the real teaching is not simply God dwells within all human beings, within all beings, within animal creatures also. That same light of consciousness is shining through
It is.
the eyes of the mouse also.
No,
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
that doesn't.
But sometimes we have to be practical also.
I know, we're
Yeah.
working on it.
Yeah, yeah,
I've not given up
yeah,
on
yeah.
relocating.
No, if
it.
it's a question of, of bringing in disease and other things, then, you have to
Yeah,
get rid of it,
we're- yes, we're discussing
Yeah.
that too.
Okay.
It's ongoing,
Yeah.
but all creatures are worthy of.
Good. Absolutely, yes, yes. We have this human-centric way of looking at the world, that we share this earth with all other living creatures as well. And we're the ones infringing on their space. Yeah.
They're just trying to live their little lives,
And they're just, yes.
like we are.
Yep. Yeah.
So if you come over, there is a mouse, be warned.
Next time. Okay.
Keep on going. It's
You have a
okay.
question?
It's okay, no, I'm good.
I think he has a.
Okay, I will ask you a
Okay.
question. It has been burning in my.
Okay, don't let it burn. Yeah.
So, we were discussing about truth and if you should be, you could have truth and then sometimes you shouldn't say it. Because, it's only if it's good and then, be quiet. So when is it the right time to speak?
I think we have to ask those three questions.
Yes.
Is it something that if we don't say anything, then, there's no harm. Nothing has been lost. It wasn't really necessary. So we can look at it the other way. How do I know if it's necessary? Well, if I don't say it, will something bad happen? I mean, what will be the results if I don't say it? Then, of course, it has to be true. But will it hurt anyone? And then we also have this other option. Sometimes is it okay to tell a lie if it saves someone?
Yeah,
And generally we say yes.
you do.
We say yes. I mean, if someone comes into your house with a gun and says, I'm going to shoot somebody in your family, you tell me if that person's here, then naturally say no. Then it's perfectly fine to just boldly and brazenly lie. to save somebody's life, something like that, we may say a little prayer within, Thakur forgive me, but yeah, so there are times like that when it is okay. Yeah, dharma, we have this wonderful expression that dharma, doing the right, knowing right from wrong, that there are certain times when there can be exceptions. In times of great danger or extraordinary circumstances or something, then we can deviate from it, and we're allowed to and we're supposed to. Will it be good to be truthful and then somebody dies from it? Yeah. So, I mean, if we want, we can say, you want to know if that's a person there, who am I to say? We can say something that, we can say, well, formally, I really didn't lie, if you analyze it or something. But it's more or less the same. We're trying purposely deceiving somebody to save somebody. Yeah. Now, where we draw the line, that's another issue. Yeah. When we can do it and when we shouldn't.
Okay, I have something to ask.
Okay.
You mentioned about strict discipline and routine, and you mentioned about Sushima when she tried to sleep a little bit more longer and felt bad. She also did opposite once, during the last days of Ramakrishna in Kashipur garden. She used to wake up at 2 instead of 3 because there was only 1 or 2 restrooms to share among all those people. So opposite is also allowed then.
Yeah, that's okay. That's what I was saying. We might find that we want to start getting up a little earlier and practice a little more of meditation and everything. Yeah, there can be some variety. Some people do this as Purushcharan. That means that you start on the new moon and you do a certain amount of japa. Next day you do more and more and more till the full moon. Then you go back again. We can do exceptional things from time to time. But if there's something that we really want to get established as a habit, and generally I'd say the most important thing is getting up in the morning, because sleep is always there pulling us back. If we can get in the habit of doing it, whether we feel good or don't feel good, then we'll find that there's really a certain freedom that comes from that. And it's very helpful in spiritual life. Otherwise, every morning we decide, do I feel well enough? Should I stay a little longer, this and that? And we find that the mind is disturbed a little bit. Anyhow, for me, and because I received this teaching and I try to follow it, I see the value of it. I find it to be something very, very important. We get established in that, and bind yourself to a routine. Nice idea.
So, thank you. So formally we take this opportunity to thank our Swamiji for coming to Cleveland and enlightening us on various topics throughout the last weekend. Thanks to all of you for coming and for your time. Thanks to all our volunteers for their services and efforts in making this a success. So I will not go into the details of the names and other stuff. And I think we should proceed for a little dinner. And Swamiji will lead us with Brahmarpana.
Okay. And my thanks to everyone for your hospitality and making me feel so welcome. It's been really a very nice experience. My first time in Cleveland and meeting with this group. So I made a lot of new friends. Yeah, thank you.
All of our friends.
Shall we do Brahmarpana now? So we'll go over there.
So please come to the back side. Yeah, we'll take those. We'll take those. Yeah, but take those.
Sorry.